A lot of things that are Web3 are still kind of reliant on trusted service providers. And our vision for Polkadot is to build a tech stack where you can build a fully trustless application. And that means storage, Sybil resistance, no reliance on centralized providers.
Welcome to the DevNTell podcast, where founders, hackers, and anyone in between showcase their products built on the bleeding edge of tech. GM, welcome to the show, Joe. I'm excited to have you on today, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So
My
I listened to some back episodes and I really like it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, love to hear that. And thank you so much for checking out the show. So we are going to have a jam-packed episode today. I know that Polkadot has been making a lot of waves, and they got a lot of exciting things coming. Very likely powered by the work that you and your team do. But before we get into all that great stuff, would you just like to give a brief introduction about yourself, if folks aren't familiar?
Yeah, my name is Joe Petrowski, and like you said, I'm the Director of Runtime Engineering at Parity Technologies. And my night job is I'm also a professional skimo athlete. So I'm doing that a lot, especially on the weekends. And my career started in aerospace engineering, but I've actually been full-time in Web3 for, I think, 9 years now. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on all platforms at Joe Petrowski. And I also have a website, which is actually just my name. It's petrow.ski.
Awesome, man. And yes, for those watching on X or YouTube, Joe's X handle is on the description and of the live stream as well. So definitely give him a follow. But wow, that seems like quite a jump, going from aerospace engineering to blockchain engineering. Just curious, what kind of fueled that jump for you, and did aerospace engineering prep you for blockchain engineering?
Yeah, actually, it did in some ways, like definitely, it's where I got the introduction to programming and computer science. Uh, but then I actually took a little bit of a detour and I was a professional cyclist for a few years. And I would say I learned a lot more practical things as a cyclist than as an engineer, which has helped me in my career in Web3, especially just dealing with chaos and uncertainty and bootstrapping things. Uh, my background in engineering was in like a really large company, and of course, they've kind of faced every problem before, so there's a lot of structure and departments and stuff. And what you find in a new industry like Web3 and in a startup like Parity is a lot of times you run into a problem and there's nobody really there to help you. You're kind of on your own and you have to figure out how to do it. And a lot of my experience in professional cycling, like going to a new country where you don't speak the language and something happens, like you realize that everything is closed on Sunday and it's not just a little bit closed, it's really closed. And trying to get like food after a race or something, you start to figure out the kind of logistics and planning and problem solving to solve these problems on the fly. And I find that those skills actually help a lot in the industry that we're in.
Yeah, definitely. Just because a lot of the things that are being built are net new and nobody's really done it before, so you basically are left on your own to figure it out, which is exciting, but at the same time also scary. But yeah, that's very interesting to hear how sport cycling in particular kind of helped you hone those skills, so to speak. But that's amazing, man. uh, you were telling me before we got on the air that you joined Parity Technologies quite early on, about 7 years, I believe. You said coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Just curious, like what attracted you to Parity Technologies? Just want to hear the story there.
Yeah, a lot of it was the opportunity to work on core tech in the Web3 space. And especially as I learned more about the Web2 application stack and a lot of the trust assumptions that are inherent in it, I actually came into crypto via trading because my background in aerospace was in shock and vibration simulation. And so this is very similar. It's like time series analysis and trying to make sense of seemingly random data and coming up with strategies around like kind of what is it going to do next. Uh, but kind of a few years prior to that, the Snowden revelations had a really big impact on me. I was working at a defense contractor at the time, so there was a lot of really inspiring or invigorating conversations going on in the office, and especially between generations. Like the younger people tending to find it actually, oh no, this was the right thing to do. Whereas, as you can imagine, like in a US defense contractor, the older generation was a little bit more like that guy's a traitor. And I think these conversations really influenced my thinking. And I did join from a practical perspective more into the trading side. And then when I started to dive deeper into like, well, what is this thing that I'm trading and start to learn about the tech stack and realized how much it aligned with my philosophy and beliefs in this area. I wanted to work on that and I got much more interested in building on the application stack than just trading. And then I was looking for jobs in, I think it was like 2018. It was like a year after I had retired from cycling, and I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I was mostly applying for jobs that were kind of like investment analysts and writing research reports. And it was kind of aligned with my background in like applied mathematics and time series analysis. And then this position for I think it was a research analyst at Parity came up, and it was like building greenfields technology and working on this tech stack. And it was definitely out of my comfort zone, and I never really worked on like production grade software before, because doing like an analysis is kind of like you're not really running like for optimization, because you can kind of run the job and come back tomorrow and see the output. So working in this type of software engineering was very different, but I was just really inspired by the mission and really drawn to working more in this vertical than in finance. And so I kind of rolled the dice and applied for it, and ultimately got the job. And now, yeah, 7 years later, I'm still here.
That's amazing, man. And yeah, you definitely made the right choice, it seems. uh, yeah. And over the years, you worked your way up to Director of Runtime Engineering. And kudos for you for climbing up the ladder there. Just curious, like, what's your day to day like, and what does the team kind of concentrate on working on the core protocol engineering there?
Yeah, at this point, my day is a lot less engineering than it used to be. So I had a phase where I got to do a lot of engineering and then became a team lead of a small team, and was kind of dividing, 50 to 70% engineering, and then also managing the team a bit on the, I don't want to say on the side, it was part of my job. But now I'm managing three different teams. It's a department, and so it's gotten a little bit out of hand. And you also have to realize a bit uh, that you become a bus factor, because I've tried a few times in the last 1 or 2 years to take on some engineering problem, because I still am an engineer and I enjoy doing that. But then you realize that like you write the PR and the feature, and then it still requires a lot of ownership down the road. And you realize that you don't have the time to commit to doing that. And it's actually much better for the organization to mentor somebody else and help them grow into that problem and take it on, than to do it yourself. Uh, so kind of answering your question with a negative, my day to day is not much coding and engineering anymore. I work a lot on, I guess, like hiring and kind of like onboarding, running this department. And then also, we recently had a CEO change. So Gavin Wood, the founder, came back, and of course has a lot of like some strategy changes and a future vision for where he wants to take the company. So a lot of working on our roadmap and how do we actually convert that vision into something that we can execute on. And that comes with a lot of work and cat herding, as you can imagine. So I would say that's my day-to-day job right now is cat herding, and yeah, coming up with the plan about how we actually do this.
Yeah, and yeah, that's it's no easy feat, that's for sure. And I feel you on that. Like as you get more seniored and tenured in whatever role you're in, you find yourself having less and less time to actually do the quote unquote fun stuff in coding, and you have to do more management and planning and strategy, which is fun in itself. But yeah, sometimes you get that itch. You get that itch to come back and like cook up a PR or a
Yeah,
feature you wanted.
coding
Yeah,
coding gives
yeah,
you some like instant gratification,
yeah,
when you build the feature, when the thing compiles, when the test pass. When you're a manager, the gratification tends to come in like 6 to 12 month cycles when you've worked on a huge project and onboarded a bunch of people, and then you see it finally go live into production. But you don't get so much of the day to day like joy of creating something new.
yeah. 100%, 100%. But you still push forward nonetheless. And you mentioned it kind of there. With Dr. Gavin Wood. I'm just curious, have you gotten a chance to work with Gavin a lot? Maybe in the early years of you joining Parity, or maybe now? I'm just curious, like, how's it like working with someone like him?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I worked with him a lot, especially in my first few years here. So, kind of leading up to the launch of Polkadot, we were working together a lot. And then I believe he took a break of about a year or something for some personal things. And then for the last few years, he's been working on a couple of projects actually. Like one of them is proof of personhood, which he's talked about at a few events like the Web3 Summit, and this other one called Jam that he's also talked about a lot with a lecture series. And the last few years, we were kind of working separately. I was working more on like the existing Polkadot tech stack, and he was working on like the vision for the next iteration of it. But now, yeah, in the last 2 or 3 months, we're working together a lot, and of course, like any leader, and he pushes you a lot, and there's some pressure with that. But it's a lot of fun because there are always 100 new ideas, and sometimes it's a bit of work to prioritize and get down to like, well, these are the five that we can deliver in the next 6 months. Uh, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and always kind of thinking about the cutting edge and the vision and what comes next.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, he's one of those special folks in the space. And yeah, that must be really exciting to get to work with him like day to day. So amazing, man.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so shifting gears slightly, I want to get into Polkadot, specifically double click into that. In your own words, what would you say is the elevator pitch for Polkadot for people who might be watching the show today or whenever, and maybe new to crypto and Web3?
Yeah, of course, it depends on your background and how you approach these things. But our goal with Polkadot is to build a protocol that can host fully Web3 applications at scale. So, as an example, like something we saw earlier this week was the Cloudflare outage, and a lot of applications that purport to be Web3 went down, right? Because of the centralized provider, um, or centralized components going out. So it kind of shows that a lot of things that are Web3 are still kind of reliant on trusted service providers. And our vision for Polkadot is to build a tech stack where you can build a fully trustless application. And that means storage, Sybil resistance, no reliance on centralized providers. And there's a lot of work and hard problems that come out underneath that when you really dig into trying to do it in practice. But yeah, that's the 30-second pitch.
Yeah, and I mentioned at the start of the show that, and you kind of hinted at it as well with some of the things Gavin's been working on, but there's a lot of exciting things kind of happening on Polkadot, especially since the first time I took a peek at it a little while back. Um, what are what are some of the more exciting things in your mind that are kind of helping boost the ecosystem today, and maybe some things that you and your team are working on?
Yeah, so we're kind of at an interesting point or an exciting inflection point where the last few years we focused a lot on solving the quote unquote hard problems. So we've had like a decentralized sequencer from day one, right? Well, we call them collators, but in principle, it's the same thing as like an L2 sequencer. We have on-chain governance that self-enacts, and it's not just a signal. We have a really robust staking platform and security guarantees that apply to all of our parachains. Again, like that being similar to an ETH2. And we have focused on those problems largely and consciously to the detriment of builder experience, developer experience, user experience. And that's why I think you don't see such a vibrant ecosystem on Polkadot compared to what you see on like Solana and Ethereum L2s, where you do see a lot of hype, but they are also running into the quote unquote hard problems like decentralized sequencers or having a Cloudflare outage to take down MetaMask, right? And so um, I think we're finally actually at a point where we're really happy with the lower level of the stack, like the governance, the staking, the validation, the scalability of parachains, some of our execution environments. We're really happy with those, and so now we are starting to turn our attention toward product development and making that experience of building on Polkadot better. And so we're starting now with this like prototyping phase where we're trying to build products ourselves within Parity. And that's something very new for Parity, where we have mostly lower level protocol developers. And so we don't really have something flashy to show for it today, but the whole point of this exercise is to really expose what are the pieces that we're missing. And I hope that in 6 to 12 months we can come out with this full stack where we say, here's how you can make an application. We have decentralized storage. We have Sybil resistance. You can run light clients on your phone or in the browser in an extension. You don't have any centralized RPC host or provider. There's no centralized storage. Everything is happening in a cryptographically secure way. There are no central intermediaries that you are depending on. And I don't have a concrete answer for something for what those components are now, but we're in the process of figuring them out, and I think it's a really exciting direction.
Well, yeah, it indeed does sound exciting, and yeah, that's a good tease. I think that's a good tease for our developer audience to get excited here. Um, and still kind of sticking on the developer experience here. Like, just curious, what is the smart contract development experience like on Polkadot? Does it differ from the EVM side of things, or the Solana smart contract development?
With EVM, the answer is yes and no. So we do have our own RISC-V based virtual machine called PVM, and about 18 months ago, we started this project to integrate this into Polkadot. And the idea was to have the PVM virtual machine, but still make an Ethereum compatible tech stack. So we have a compiler called ResolC, which compiles Solidity code to the RISC-V PVM code. And then we also worked on all the tools like Foundry and Hardhat and Anvil and like everything else that you would expect as an Ethereum developer. It would just be compiling your bytecode to PVM instead of EVM. And what we learned along the way was that this worked for new contracts and the newer versions of Solidity, but there were a lot of legacy contracts like Circle CCTP comes to mind as like an obvious one that are on older versions of Solidity, and they just do not play nice with RISC-V at all. And the thought of kind of asking all these people who have contracts that they can just kind of deploy to rewrite their contracts and have them re-audited, it's a lot of hoops to jump through. So we also added an EVM backend. So we actually have one interface that has two different virtual machines as a backend. So if you want the full 100% EVM Ethereum experience, you can use the EVM and just deploy with that as your virtual machine, and everything's basically guaranteed to work. And then, but we have found that for like more compute heavy operations, including for ZK applications, the PVM performs much better. And so if you're writing an application from scratch and you're not really beholden to like an old version of Solidity or something, and you have a bit more freedom, then you can still use Solidity, like the newer versions, because we have this Resol C, which will compile it to PVM bytecode. But you can also write contracts in like Rust or C or something else. And if you really want to like optimize the performance for a specific compute heavy application, you can do that. So the tooling around PVM is still pretty new, and I think we'll have a lot of room to grow there. But that's also something where in 6 to 12 months, I'm really excited that we're going to have something that will be able to have a really high performance smart contract platform, and that will enable a lot of new on-chain use cases that might not have been possible in EVM environments.
That sounds super exciting, man. And yeah, I can't wait. 6 to 12 months out. You think it's a lot of time, but it's not. It's not quite.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah,
fast.
it goes fast like that. Yeah.
I think it'll
uh,
be live. Uh, we were hoping it would be live before Christmas, but it looks like
mm,
maybe in the first 1 or 2 weeks of January, this will all go live. So I have a few links I can drop into the show notes, and that has documentation on our kind of trial version on testnet. But if you're really keen to start going without the PVM specific tools, then we have some like docs for nerds that we can share, and hopefully some people can get started using it.
I'm sure our audience is geared towards cutting edge and playing around with different tooling. So we'll definitely have that documentation there for folks to mess around with. Weekend is coming up as well, so no better time. Um, and you touched on it a little earlier on, but I want to double click a little bit into a jam that is still, it seems like it's still in kind of like a research development phase, but just want to hear like what is jam, and if you can provide kind of a high level overview of what it is for the audience today.
Yeah. So JAM stands for Jam or Join Accumulate Machine, and I don't want to disappoint because I know your audience is very developer heavy, and I haven't been super in the weeds on Jam, but I can give a high level overview of it. And the main thing is that if you look at like the original idea of, first I'll start with like from ETH to Polkadot. If you look at the original idea for ETH2, it was having a bunch of shards of the Ethereum chain, but still with the same runtime environment, the EVM, right? And then the fundamental thing that we changed in Polkadot was to actually make them heterogeneous. So we said, instead of forcing the EVM as the quote unquote backend of each chain, we'll just say as long as you can compile this to WebAssembly, you can use it. And the idea was that people could write their application in a more custom way, including smart contract environments. But also, if they have a specific use case and they don't need smart contracts, then they can just put all of that as a first class citizen into their runtime. And what we found was that this was also a little bit of a one size fits all model. It's actually a parachain is actually overkill for a lot of applications. A lot of applications are just fine as a smart contract. They don't need the horsepower of a full chain. So it was a bit more like infrastructure and demand on the application developer. And if you didn't already have product market fit and didn't know what you wanted to build, it was rather burdensome to go with like the parachain route. Um, and we also found that this like asynchronous composability was a big burden for people because a blockchain is like a single threaded computer, right? So you have a bunch of single threaded computers and they kind of have a way to talk to each other, but they have to wait at least one block. So they have to finish their execution, hand off their state root, and they can send off a message as part of that. But they're going to have to wait for a response, which could come a few blocks later. And that's a little bit different than how like a CPU, like a multi-threaded CPU would run an application on your computer. So the idea with Jam is to make it feel almost more like a normal, like if you're using like a 64 core MacBook, then make it feel a little bit more like that. So it just gives a lot more flexibility in what the services that you're running are. And so I can give like a few examples. Like one is like you could run smart contracts directly on Jam rather than having to have like a parachain and then like using a smart contract on that. Um, and you can also do the scheduling a lot better. So rather than having this like, oh, it's going to run like every 6 seconds and you need to like get a spot in this block, you can just kind of like buy this allocated execution time. And then finally, it does allow for like somewhat synchronous execution. So you could have two applications that are, in principle separate. They don't share memory, but you could get them to agree that like we actually want to be scheduled to execute together, and they could make synchronous calls between each other in the time that they've been allowed to execute, and then they can go once they've done their synchronous calls, they can go back to being their standalone applications and doing independent scheduling. So and then it also has quite a bit more scalability. So uh, I don't know the details of the scalability plan, but there is some plan that we can kind of clone multiple jams and share security across them by sharing a validator set. Um, so yeah, not the best answer, I know, but it should kind of point people in the conceptual direction of it.
Of course, yes. And yeah, again, that sounds like there's going to be a lot of exciting things kind of coming up in the Polkadot ecosystem and around Jam and some of the things that you mentioned earlier on. So, um, like, how can people keep up with all this? What's the best way to follow along?
Yeah, I think following our work, on our website, on GitHub, on Twitter, we're sharing there, whether it's from Parity or from I think it's called @Polkadot on Twitter. So yeah, I think we'll be posting all the major updates there.
Amazing, amazing. And yeah, those details will also be in the description of this podcast. So definitely, you'll want to follow along there for all the latest updates. And just as we're about to close here, since we are a developer audience mostly, are there any opportunities that Parity Technologies is hiring for that you might want to highlight on the show today to catch someone's attention?
Yeah, Parity is hiring, so we have opportunities, I think, for quite a few roles. So yeah, I work in the runtime, which is we're also hiring because we have a few improvements and projects that we want to make at the runtime level. But also, as I said earlier, a lot of our work is focused on prototyping products and then building out the infrastructure to make the next generation of products easier. So especially if you're interested in like tooling, testing, infrastructure, product development, API development, anything that makes building applications easier. Storage is a big thing, so like working on storage. We have a lot of gaps to fill, and so yeah, especially on this like integrations and tooling and API design fronts, there's a lot of work, and then also product development. So I think we're looking for a few in-house product developers and maybe some UX people. So there's a lot that, especially in like the upper part of the stack.
Wow, man. Yeah. And all those opportunities can be found on the careers page of Parity Technologies.
Yeah, that should be kept up to date.
Excellent. Awesome. Awesome. Well, there you go, folks. What better time than now to dive into the ecosystem of Polkadot and start playing around? And why not throw your hat in to see if you can join the party yourself? But as we're coming to time here, Joe, just want to thank you again so much for taking the time out of your day to come chat with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. And yeah, with that, I just want to wish everybody a very happy Friday, very happy weekend wherever you may be, and safe travels for any of our viewers today who might be traveling back home from DevConnect. And we will catch you back here next week for another great episode of DevNTell. Till then, have a good one, folks. Cheers. If you enjoyed this episode of DevNTell, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode. Till the next one, cheers.